Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, a very warm welcome to you. My name is Anna and I'm a doll customizer here on YouTube. I realized with a bit of a shock the other day that I've been doing this for about 4 years now, or even longer if you count the dolls I made for this video when I was still at university. It's been a lot of trial and error, but I've learned a lot during my time here. And I would never have gotten to where I am without all of you, or without all of the amazing customizers I've learned from over the years. I did a poll recently in my community tab, and based on that, many of you guys are new or aspiring doll customizers. And there's probably even more of you out there that the algorithm gods haven't allowed me to reach yet. Over the past 4 years, I've also gotten a lot of questions for advice and quite a few comments like, I really want to customize dolls, but I don't know where to start. My goal for this channel has always been to be as helpful and informative as I can be for both new and experienced doll artists, but I've never actually sat down and made a video or a series about everything I know, since my videos are usually focused on a specific doll and how I made them. So this month, I wanted to start a series in which I share most, if not all, of the knowledge that I've gained in the hopes that it'll teach you something new, or give you a new perspective if you've been doing this for a while. Or give you the foundation and inspiration you need to take the plunge if doll customizing is something you've always wanted to try or something you're just starting out with. My plan is to make a few different videos where each one is dedicated to a specific part of the doll customization process so that I can delve into each of those in more detail than I can in a normal customization video. A doll customizing 101, if you will. And today's video is all about the supplies you would need to start customizing dolls. In the upcoming videos, I'll show you exactly how to use these supplies in practice, so don't worry if it all feels confusing or overwhelming right now. You can always save this video to come back to later after you've watched the other videos in the series, if you want to. For this video though, I really just want to give you a kind of list of everything I typically use, which brands have worked best for me, and how beginner-friendly these supplies are to use in my opinion. Now, full disclaimer here. I'm not at all saying that my way of doing things is the best way, or that I'm any kind of expert. But I do hope that by making videos like this where I can share the knowledge that I have gained with you, it would at least be a good jumping off point for you to explore this hobby further. And who knows, maybe one day you can teach other artists how to do this too. So with that said, let's get into it. If you've watched doll customizing videos before, which I suspect most of you have, you'll know that there are multiple parts of customizing a doll, and it's kind of up to you how many of those you want to do. For the sake of being thorough, I'll talk about each of these steps, and I've grouped the supplies together according to those different parts of the customizing process. So fair warning, some of the supplies might overlap. For example, you'll probably end up using scissors and a good all-purpose glue for most parts of the customization, so they're definitely good items to have. Before you can start customizing your doll, typically you'll need to prep them first. To do this, you'll need the doll, obviously, scissors to cut the hair, boiling water in a cup to remove the head, a blunt tool like a cuticle pusher, and tweezers to remove the hair plugs inside the scalp, and 100% acetone or nail polish remover with acetone in it, cotton pads, and maybe earbuds to remove the factory face up. The acetone might be slightly harder to find, but I recommend checking at a pharmacy. That's where I usually find mine. Next, let's talk about rerouting, since it's the most beginner-friendly way to customize a doll, in my opinion. The term reroute really just means giving a doll new hair, but there are a few different ways you can go about doing this. There's the traditional reroute, where you give the doll new hair by stabbing it into existing hair plugs. For this, you will need a rerouting tool, which you can purchase online or make yourself by purchasing a handheld drill and breaking the tip off of the eye of a needle. So I like to do it at kind of an angle, and then you have to kind of wiggle it back and forth until it snaps. This is used to plunge the hair into the doll's head. The hair, and I'll talk in more detail about the different types of hair in a bit. Glue to keep the hair in place inside the scalp, Make sure this isn't water-soluble glue, since sometimes you might need to style the hair with the boil washing method. And styling tools like scissors, eyebrow razors, metal chopsticks, a pet brush, a hair straightener, and hairspray. Which of these you need will fully depend on the style you're going for. This method is slightly less beginner friendly in my opinion, because you need supplies that you're less likely to have already, and because a lot of things can go wrong during, like needles breaking, scalps tearing, or hair snapping off. But don't let that discourage you, it's still a lot of fun. Alternatively, you can give a doll hair by using wefts. Think of it like making little extensions for your doll. For this, you will need the hair, PVA glue that dries clear for making the wefts, or non-soluble glue if you plan on boil washing it, a sheet of plastic to make them on, and a ruler, which I use to keep things neat, otherwise the glue just kind of goes everywhere. Scissors for cutting the wefts smaller and for styling, tacky glue to glue the hair to the head or wig cap, and styling tools like I mentioned before, depending on what hairstyle you're making. In my opinion, wefts are way more beginner friendly because I think most of us already have scissors and rulers lying around the house, and then all you really need to get is the right kind of glue, which you can buy at a regular store most of the time, and the hair, which doesn't need to be expensive or hard to find. But I'll get to that in a second. For short hairstyles, you might want to use the flocking method. For this, you'll need glue, again, and flocking powder, which you can purchase, usually at hobby or craft stores, or make it yourself using yarn or some other fiber and cutting it up. Finally, there's wig making. It's pretty easy to make a wig cap, and you can do so by using some stretchy fabric, PVA glue, and some rubber bands. Usually people use wefts when they're making a wig cap, but you can also root a wig cap, especially if you use the sewing method of rerooting instead of glue. Now let's talk about the different types of hair you can use. The main three that I use and see other people using are acrylic yarn, synthetic doll hair like nylon, saran, poly, etc., and natural or synthetic fibers like mohair or viscose. In my opinion, acrylic yarn is the most beginner friendly because it's affordable and easy to find. Over here you can buy it online or find it at crafts or fabric stores. It does, however, take a bit more work, and you need a pet brush if you're going to comb the yarn out. If you don't plan on combing it out or styling it with heat, you can of course use any other yarn as well, especially if you're going for like a multi-textured look. Synthetic hair requires less work, but it's way more expensive and typically hard to find if you're looking for good quality hair. You can harvest hair from like human wigs and extensions, which I have done before, but it will still cost you more than the yarn, so for those reasons I would say it's less beginner friendly. With natural fibers, there are moral aspects to consider, like was the fiber acquired ethically? Sometimes with things like mohair, there's also cleanup involved, and you would need to dye it if you want a fun fantasy color. On the other hand, synthetic fibers like viscose can come in any shade of the rainbow, but in my experience it's incredibly difficult to work with, so I wouldn't consider either of these options particularly beginner friendly. To customize your doll's outfit, you could use existing doll clothes and accessories and simply style them in a creative way. You could also adapt them by adding things or repainting them. That's the more beginner-friendly way. But to make doll clothes from scratch, which is slightly more advanced, you will need the following supplies. A pattern, which you can buy online, and it's easy but a bit more expensive, or make yourself, which is a bit harder but cheaper. Scissors, fabric, which is luckily readily available, and you can even harvest fabric from your old clothes if you want. Pins, needles, and thread if you plan on sewing, or glue if you decide to go the no-sew route, which I think can be more beginner-friendly. And decorations like beads, charms, fabric trims, ribbons, embroidery thread, etc. For the accessories, it's harder to make a complete list because this really depends on what kind of accessories you're planning on making, but here's a list of what I use most often. Clay, like polymer clay, air dry clay, or epoxy sculpt, the last of which is a bit more expensive and harder to find. Plastic wrap and masking tape, acrylic paint and acrylic paint markers, paint brushes, acrylic varnish or Mod Podge, glue like tacky glue or hot glue, wire and pliers, UV or epoxy resin, a UV lamp, glitter or luster dust, alcohol ink, and heat moldable plastic for mold making or making the accessories themselves. Giving a doll a new face-up is slightly more advanced because some of the materials can be expensive and hard to find. It also takes a bit of artistic skill in terms of facial anatomy and keeping things symmetrical. It's something that requires practice, and if you're scared of doing this, I recommend practicing on paper first. It's not the same as working on a 3D face by any means, but you can still learn more about anatomy, symmetry, keeping your lines thin, and how to get comfortable with the supplies, which can be very helpful. Before I started customizing dolls, I studied art and had art classes in school, and that gave me a really good base knowledge that I still apply to dolls today. And you don't need to go to school for this. YouTube is a great resource, and there are thousands if not millions of tutorials available online. Once you're ready for the face-up, you will need a sealant to help everything stick to the face and save your progress. I use Citadel, but many customizers use MSC, which until very recently you couldn't get in my country, so keep an eye out for a review or a comparison video in the future. It can be quite hard to find and quite pricey, but it's really important to give your face-up longevity. Protective gear for when you spray the sealant, like a gas mask and protective glosses. For your safety, this is absolutely crucial because sealants and other aerosols like spray paint are extremely toxic and dangerous to inhale. Soft pastels for shading. They're the ones that feel like chalk or look a bit like eyeshadow. How much you pay for these really depends on the brand. These ones didn't cost me much, but pan pastels can cost a bit more. Aquarelle or watercolor pencils for sketching out the details of the face. My favorite brand is Faber-Castell, and I especially like their Albrecht Dürer line for the color payoff you get. They are a bit pricey too, but you can buy one at a time. A pencil sharpener for keeping the lead of the pencils nice and sharp and thin. Erasers to remove mistakes or soften colors. I tend to use these pencil erasers and soft erasers most often. Acrylic paint or gouache, which can help you get more saturation in the face-up. I prefer acrylic paint because gouache tends to not seal as well for me, and then it can run or smear if you apply something like varnish. And paintbrushes, both for the dry supplies and wet supplies on the list. My favorite paintbrush for face-ups is actually one that's meant for nail art because it's super thin and great for painting really delicate lines. This dotting tool is also meant for nail art, but I use it all the time in face-ups. You can also use acrylic gloss varnish to make certain parts of the face shiny. In general, you have to use water-based materials when you're doing the face-up. Things like regular pencils, oil pastels, or oil paints, as well as varnishes that have solvents in them, won't seal properly or will react badly with the chemicals in the sealant and can become sticky. This is probably the section that will cost you the most, in all honesty, because art supplies aren't always cheap and you might have to go to art or craft supply stores specifically to buy them. But if it helps, I can assure you that you'll probably only need to buy one set of pencils like every 5 or 10 years, if that, depending on how much you use them. And I use my can of Citadel for up to like 10 or 11 dolls before I need a new one. So while the cost up front is a bit much, you won't need to spend that much every month or even every year because the supplies last a really long time. You can also build up your collection slowly and buy only the basic colors of paint or pencil set first, which can help reduce the cost by a lot. I will also say that it's better to wait and save up for better quality materials if you can, rather than buying cheaper materials and getting it all up front. The only supply I'd say it's okay to skimp on the quality a bit is the acrylic paint, but for everything else though, I recommend getting the good stuff. You'll save yourself a lot of headache, because better materials tend to have better pigmentation, and so you would need to do fewer layers of the face up before it looks finished. Finally, that brings us to the body mods section, which I wouldn't really recommend for beginners. Like the face-up, the supplies tend to be a bit more pricey and you need some sculpting experience depending on what you're doing. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try it anyway. As with most things in life, you'll get better and better with practice, and it can be super fun to create a unique body for your doll. You can also start small with minor changes like removing or adding ears, changing the hand posture, or giving your doll a tail, for example. The supplies I use most often when doing body mods are sturdy wire, glue like hot glue, super glue, epoxy glue, and tacky glue, stuff for sanding like sanding paper, emery boards, or sanding blocks, sculpting tools, a craft knife, sculpting material like polymer clay, air dry clay, or epoxy sculpt, tin foil and masking tape, a drill or rotary tool, an airbrush and airbrush paint or acrylic paint and paint brushes for changing body colors, and protective gear again, like a mask, glasses, and gloves to protect you from cuts, dust, and bits of flying plastic. I also want to mention the true unsung hero of my channel. This cutting board protects my desk from cuts and scrapes and drill holes, as you can see, and glue while I'm working, and you can get them in fun colors. Mine has definitely seen some better days. If you're a younger customizer, I want to urge you to please be very careful, wear proper protection, and do body mods under supervision or with the help of an adult. Most, if not all, of the injuries I have gotten while customizing dolls have happened during the body modding phase, which is another reason why I would say body mods are not super beginner friendly. And finally, a while back, one of you guys asked me how I store my dolls, so I wanted to show you. I use these plastic tubes and put them on stands inside there. It keeps them clean and dust free, and it's a lot easier to wipe dust off of these than it would be to clean it off of a customized doll, I think. I tend to buy these in bulk and they're not super pricey. You can also look around for things like pasta containers that are the right size. My mini-me is actually stored in a pasta container at the moment. And that's about it! Those are all the supplies you would need for doll customizing, or at least, I think that's everything. Sound off in the comments below if you think there's something I missed. I also want to add that you absolutely do not need to go out and buy all of this at once. Most customizers started off small and slowly built up a collection of supplies, so I recommend starting simple, like maybe just doing a reroute first, and slowly working your way up to doing a full custom, and purchasing the supplies as you need them. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm planning to make this a series so that I can show you every part of making a custom doll in more detail. So if you don't want to miss those when they come out, subscribe to my channel and keep an eye out for them. I hope you liked this video and that you found it helpful. If you did enjoy it and you think I deserve it, please give me a big old-fashioned thumbs up below. Those really help out my videos. And if you're a new or aspiring doll customizer, or even if you're an experienced one, chime off in the comments and let me know what doll you want to make or you're busy making. I would love to chat with you guys about your current or upcoming projects. For this series, I'm planning on making a furry friend. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in my next video. As always, stay golden. Bye bye! Ooh, that's gonna be so loud, I'm sorry.